it's cool to hit me like when the album's coming out next month. But what's even cooler is when you've like been in my store and talked to me or my staff and like know me before that, right? Like we have some kind of relationship. Like I know you, I know your Instagram, I've seen you. Like take steps to make yourself familiar to people that you might want to work with in the future, even if it's not in the context of like one specific thing that you want to do. Um, there's like a famous saying, right? Like it's not what you know, it's who you know. But I actually flip that around and I say it's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Welcome to 24/7 Artists. I am excited about today's conversation because one of the ways that I have loved working in this industry is doing shows and events where I'm not stuck in the studio, where I'm not in my own four walls, and creative spaces aren't just recording studios, but they can be venues, they can be record stores, and those are some of my favorite places to be. So today I've got my guy Joe Lapan, who owns Songbird DC, my favorite small venue. And when I say small, that is not like that. To me, that's a cool thing. Like a small venue is like where I know if an artist really has it. So it's by far my favorite. I've been to a small venue in every city. I can say every major city and in mid market city, and Songbird is the standard. But he also owns a record store, which, if you know me, means like I love him doubly because that's where I get my sample chops. So, my guy Joe, I'm so excited to have this convo with you. If you can, just tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, you do. Yeah, Joe Lappin, like you said, co-owner of Songbird Music House and then Birdland Records, the record store here in Washington, D.C. Co-own with my partner Alicia Edmondson, and yeah, a lot going on. If you don't know, or for those who don't know, we are fully over in Northeast now at the Union Market neighborhood. Both our record store and our venue are there now after about 6 years in Adams Morgan, Northwest. So, you know, the pandemic time was definitely a period of pivot and shift and relocation for us. And, we can talk about that story a little bit. But we're pretty happy over in Northeast. Like I said, Union Market, most people kind of know, sort of there between like Florida Ave and New York Ave. A little closer out to where House Studios used to be. Um,
Right. So the
but it's it's a nice sort of growing area in the middle of the city, near the Noma Metro, not too far from Union Station and North Capitol, and then sort of butts up against Gallaudet and just north of like 8th Street and the Capitol Hill neighborhoods. And then you got like New York Ave and Florida Ave. So it's pretty we're pretty happy with that the general location, and then we've got these two spaces um, in the sort of Union Market district proper, which happy to kind of orient people to or talk more about the geography or the move or the spaces or the programming or how they work together or sort of anything that we want to touch
so
on.
now I love it, and so my tie to that area, like you said, the original House Studios, which was 12th in Rhode Island, Northeast DC, was walking distance to Union Market, or at least we used to do bike share, the little travel bikes. And Davine and I lived off Benning.
Right, like 12th, yeah, like 12th and Rhode Island. They're like sort of near where like the Home Depot complex is, and
It's our
and
stomping grounds.
heading over towards like Brookland a little
Brookland,
bit.
yep. Brook for all the
Yeah.
DC folks, Brookland in the house. And Davine and I lived off Benning Road in Northeast. And for the first 3 years of house, we didn't have a car. So when bike share came around, which was like 2011, 2012, they set up a bike share at the beginning of our neighborhood in Benning Road. And it was run right by where Rhode Island Row is, which is, like you said, the Home Depot, the Bank of America, all that's over there. And we rode our bikes every day, 365 days a year for 2 years, from Rhode Island Avenue to Benning Road, cutting through Gallaudet. And so before
Right.
Union Market, like right before they developed it, before anything was there, when it was just kind of the swap meet and like the butchers and like the, all those stores that were there, Davina and I would ride through, and I'd always tell her, I'd be like, yo, like this area would be so perfect for house because you can walk to the metro, you can walk to restaurants. That little Subway was on the corner where you could like 2 o'clock in the morning go get a sub after you left the club. It's like we're right next to Northwest. You're not too far from getting on Route 50. Gallaudet's here, so there's always like some kind of college energy. And so we rode our bikes, and every day I would speak that. And then as we saw it getting developed, we always talked about like if we ever rebuilt a studio or a creative office or a space, this is where we'd want to be. So it's funny because now as we talk about building creative studios and spaces for 24/7, that's at the top of my list of where we potentially will put a 24/7 studio in the DMV. So
Did you live on the near side of the river, or
I
on the
live
other
right
side of the
on the other
river off
side of the
Benning?
river. So when you cross the river, the very next right turn, right where the basketball courts and tennis courts are, there's like a Shell gas station. We lived in that River Terrace, not River Terrace.
Right. Like you go past, like there's the
Yep,
golf
on the
course,
left.
there's the historically African
Yep.
American golf
So
course.
when I say 360, 700 and however many days that is on our bikes every day, rain, snow, sleet, sun, we rode our bikes every day from work to home and saw that corridor kind of getting
I hear
developed.
you, man. I've
Yeah,
been there, man. I have times in my life like that where I was riding a bike everywhere and
you
making it
got to make
work,
it
you
work.
know?
And in fact, we look back and we say those were some of the funnest times in business when you really had no idea and you just kind of made do with what you have. And like, I remember one day we were riding and it like poured rain and we're on like Benning Road, but because it was such a bad storm, it was like there were no cars out. And so we're in the middle of Benning Road on these bike shares, like just riding our bikes, laughing our asses off. And the people are looking at us like hiding under like the bus stops and the awnings of their houses, like we're crazy. And we're just laughing because we're like, yo, like, what a freeing moment. What like an amazing moment to like, we own a business, we have a studio. At that time, like we had just won like Best of DC again. And it was just like, thank you just to like be able to do this. While most people would be like, dude, you don't have a car. And obviously now we have a car, but yeah, man. So
I
like,
mean, you were
we're
living life.
living.
I mean, that's when we feel at our most I think that's what we feel as our most sort of engaged with the world, like we're
Yep.
focused on something,
Yep.
we're living life, and it kind of doesn't
Yep.
matter if it's raining. You have a focus, you have
Yep.
a passion, and that's when you like sort of feel best about your place in the
Yep.
world
Living.
sometimes.
That's it. So, the reason it's funny, like, as I look at the people I'm having these convos with, you would think 24/7 artists, I would only be speaking with, the musicians, the artists, the rappers, singers in my life. But when I think of an artist, I think of everything around that artist that makes them successful. And, our history, I think the first event that I did with you and we did with you was we did a boom scat, like live listening performance slash preview of their album event with like some of their core fans. And like, I remember like I'd heard of the space. I went by the record stores upstairs. This is when you guys were in Adams Morgan. And I just loved the vibe of the space. It just like, it almost, you forgot where you were when you walk in your spot. And then when you go downstairs to the venue, it was like, it was your own little like oasis. And I was like, yo, we have to do something here. I don't even know what. We'll make something up, but we have to do something here. And I just remember you guys were so open to like, yeah, man, whatever you guys want to do, we'll figure it out. You guys like made food for us. And like, it was just such a cool little like moment where I know the artists appreciated it. But I think like even those experiences when I watched like Kanye do like these big over the top dramatic things, it's like, every artist aspires to that. But I just love that like within our circle in DC as an independent label with independent artists, we were able to reach out to a local venue owner and you opened your doors and were like, yo, man, if you're going to do a listening, let's do it on a Tuesday night. We'll have some food out. We'll set up the DJ. If y'all want to perform, y'all can. And, I just think like What was your mindset?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember that
what was
one.
your mindset?
I do remember that one. I was
No, just saying,
mhm.
what was your mindset going into like opening up this venue? Was it did you picture that kind of stuff, or were you like, I'm gonna get a venue and I got to compete with Live
Actually,
Nation and like book out 300 shows a year? Like, what was your vision?
no, yeah, actually, like it wasn't that. Like, actually, the vision was more exactly what you're talking about. So I'm sure we were very excited to partner with you and do that. The vision was actually more like stuff like that. Um, we come from a background of like really loving music and like loving the granularity, like reading about it and going to these like listening events and like really providing like a more deliberate focus on the music and on the artists. I had started going to these events called Classic Album Sundays where somebody would present and we would discuss and listen to a classic album on like a nice sound system. And that was like the original vision and mindset and that basement that you refer to. And like we would have, then I came to make a partnership with Classic Album Sundays, so we would host those once a month as like the DC franchise or whatever. And one of the guys who used to present with me would be like, this would be like my monthly trip down into the music layer. And that was sort of the original vision actually, which was like I used to talk about like the sports bar for sports, like but like the sports
Mm-hmm.
bar for music. So it actually wasn't just about the live performance. It was going to be about, you know, those types of events and like music trivia night and DJ nights and album celebrations and, celebrating recorded music, celebrating, local artists talking about their music. So, in fact, the live music component kind of grew up within and around that, and actually like exceeded our expectations. So, our original vision wasn't to like book 300 live shows a year and compete and yada yada. Like the vision was more to do something a little different. But like it's all related and it all kind of you have to pay attention to what people want and like be willing to make pivots and be flexible and then like some of the live music stuff and attracting like local and touring bands to play live shows down there like took on a life of its own that we didn't even necessarily expect or set out for, but we were excited about it when we started saw that start to happen. And it's like, okay, people know what it is to go to a show on a Friday night. So like, okay, great. Like, so let's build that in and then still do the other stuff that we do around that on like Tuesdays and Sundays. And like, then, the bar was open every night. So it's like, let's have, DJs or do these other events. And then, like the space dictating its own thing. And then yeah, we always intended to do like the daytime record cafe space. So we always wanted to retail records because we felt that was an important part of everything and making sure that we had like those relationships with labels and artists and um, when you are selling and sort of promoting someone's physical product, that's one of the reasons that artists do physical product is because it provides this tangible thing and it provides this like milestone. So it's like this project, this expression of our music is coming out in a physical form. It provides something for fans to get their head around, and then also something that you can like build a little social event around. So we always wanted to do that, and like I said, because of that, we can then form our relationships with like the artists and the labels and be like, okay, hey, so let's do like a cool event around this release on a Friday evening and or let's whatever your ideas are because like the artists have all their great and special ideas too about like what's special and unique about their music and their release and their product. Like whether that's interesting merch or interesting ways to, engage with the fans on social media or whatever it is. Every artist is doing something different. So we wanted to like create a space for that also. But again, usually that is tied to some
Hmm.
release of music or some tangible event or piece of music.
So,
That's a milestone where you're going to do something special. Like regardless of all of your day-to-day engagement with your fans, like right, it leads to this milestone of like I'm putting out
hmm
a song, I'm
hmm
putting out an album, I'm putting out a tape or a CD or a record. Like it's just natural that that's creating this like special moment in
so
time.
with that moment, right? Because our audience is going to be, an artist and their team or venue owner. But let's say an artist and their team right now. We have music coming out in February, March, and there's a local small venue or a locally owned venue, independently owned venue in our area. What's the best approach to for you, right? It's not one size fits all, but just for you, like an artist is coming with their idea and they want to do something dope in your space and they might want to sell vinyl and they might want to do merch and all that. What's the best approach for you? Like if I'm an artist or an artist manager or an indie label and I want to do something with an independently owned venue.
Sure. I mean, it's a few different things, right? It's like, especially if you're local. Like, look, every artist is starts somewhere and is in a different part of their career, or you know, and everybody has a pretty good sense of like where they're at and what they're trying to achieve. Um, especially like if you're a local artist, like make a relationship with me over time. Like, don't it's cool to hit me like when the album's coming out next month, but what's even cooler is when you've like been in my store and talked to me or my staff and like know me before that, right? Like we have some kind of relationship. Like I know you, I know your Instagram, I've seen you. Like take steps to make yourself familiar to people that you might want to work with in the future, even if it's not in the context of like one specific thing that you want to
Yeah.
do. Um, there's like a famous saying, right? Like it's not what you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's who you know. But I actually flip that around and I say it's not who you know, it's who knows
Mm-hmm.
you. So like
Yeah.
make me know you. And that's not even like some challenge or
Yeah.
like pressure. Like I'm a nice guy. Like just come by my store, talk to me about something, like tell me what you're up to. And then that's going to make me want to like look for the right way to partner with you. And again, like venues for shows, right? I have to like there's a business side of that. I have to have a sense of like the
Mm-hmm.
business side and tickets and draw and all that. But because I have the record store and because I do other things, like there's ways that I can promote and work and highlight your music that aren't
Mm-hmm.
just throwing a show. Um, and that's one of the reasons like I always wanted to keep the record store and keep spaces that aren't just about a venue that sells tickets to a particular show, because I want to be able to like offer other opportunities to like either put your product in my store or do like a free
Mm-hmm.
in-store performance or do a listening party or like and at the venue, it's important to us to have like some open mic nights and other things, that we've had people that do the open mic night and then they end up being maybe like an opener on a show. And again, the comments I'm making right now may be geared towards more like your startup, smaller, trying to get it going type artist. But that
It's a lot
that's a
of
lot of
people.
people, right? Like every every city, every marketplace has sort of a thriving kind of indie. There's a lot of talent that's just like looking to like how do I get myself out there and how do I try to make a living in this with my art. And so like these comments are probably geared towards that group, and again a very talented group of people. um so I mean, that's kind of how I think about it. Like, it's just all, you're going to send an email to like my main info or booking account. That's cool. Like, it's going to get looked at, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of those. So it's like those, and I'm telling you, like, it's not, those people stand out, right? Like the people that I see come through my store and just talk to me normal, or like talk to my staff normal, or just show up at the thing. Um,
yeah,
it's noticed. Like it works. Like, and just how you sort of carry yourself or handle yourself in those situations is just going to speak volumes about how you're going to carry yourself as like an artist into the more business related situations. But like, we're in the business of doing that, so we want to be your fan, we want to hear your music, and we want to be excited about you, and just like give us that hook to do
yeah. No,
so.
you're absolutely right. It's something. I love what you said about like it's not who you know, it's who knows you. One of the things like so first time I went to the store, right? I remember I bought coffee and I wasn't a coffee drinker, but I remember like the guy was like, "Hey, you
You
want a
froze up on me
coffee?"
a little bit. I'm
Huh?
still here.
All good. Um, and then the guy was like, "Hey, if you want a coffee, you can have a coffee on the house." And I was like, "Sure." I didn't even drink coffee. I just took it. But I remember I bought like 3 albums that day. I know you had like a local section. I think I bought a Go-Go album, and then I bought I think it was a Common album. Because the only albums I buy, my rule for album purchases is it's an album I listen to all the way through. So any album that I listen to all the way through, anytime I listen to it, that's what I'm buying. Um, but I remember buying those albums, and again, not for the concept of like, oh, I'm gonna buy so that Joe knows that, but it's like I know what it is to be a small business owner, and I know that those two purchases of that day mean the world to you as a business owner because those might be the only 2 albums you sell that hour or that day. And so like any small business I've worked with, I've been a customer as well as a partner. There's no one that I partner with that I haven't been a customer of. And then a friend of, meaning like I also will just check in and be like, yo, bro, like how you doing? Or if I'm hosting an event, like when we did our Live at House series, I'd always invite you guys because like I also know like you have your space, right? Like we both own spaces and the space is really cool to you and really cool to everybody else. But it is a breath of fresh air when you get to leave your space and go to somebody else's space and just kind of like be a guest as opposed to being the host. So it was like always important that I was like, yo, if we ever do anything at house, just invite Joe and Alicia because like I want to make sure like they know they're a part of our community as much as we are a part of theirs. And I tell artists and label owners, you have to do that.
Yeah,
Like
I mean that.
invite them to your things and like go support their things. Oh, Songbird's doing a Sunday night open mic. Yo, let me go with 3 people and go buy 4 drinks and just go support, even if it's for an hour or two. And if you do that a couple times within a year, they're going to remember like, oh man, you're the guy that like bought people here and like supported. So now when I come to you with a really cool idea, in addition to the idea being cool, it's like, well, I also want to see this person win because like they damn sure helped me win. Like, but if you don't do that, you've never been to Songbird, you've never stepped foot in the door, you don't even know what it looks like, don't know the people that work there, and you send that info email, like you said, you'll get it. But is there any incentive for me to like see beyond just the request? And so I love that advice, and I hope people listen to that because it's something I've preached for years with every artist, every indie label owner I've worked with, and a lot of people don't take that advice. But I'm glad you're saying it because it's the relationship stems from just these small actions that build up over time.
Yeah, and I mean I see them, I spot them, I recognize them, and like, yeah, we're just people too. I mean, it was very special for us to get invited to like a house studio thing, and be part of that community. So like, I think everybody has the ability to, even if your community or
Mm-hmm.
your house is just your family, like where you live. I mean, everybody has the ability to welcome somebody else into their world or to invite them to something. Um, and so like that makes us feel special and feel cool. So like, I think that's an ability that
Yep.
everybody
Yep.
has, right? Um, totally. And like I said, the house studio thing was dope. Like, that was a cool thing that you created, and it was important to us when we were getting started to be invited to those things and to like mingle with other people. And like I remember going, there
Yep.
was a one with Kokai we came to.
Mm-hmm.
There was one with
Yep.
maybe Manny that we came to. There was another one. There was I'm drawing. There was a young woman. She was sort of like a soul folk singer songwriter type. I forget her name unfortunately right now, but I
Mm-hmm.
remember coming to three or four of those, and they were super cool. And like, you know, obviously you have that business and that space, but hopefully those events were fairly low impact ways or creative ways of like including other people in your community, like people like you said that were already in your network, and it wasn't like this super heavy lift to
Mm-hmm.
like let them do a set in your
Mm-hmm.
studio room and invite people to it, right? Like, so my point there is there's just versions of that. Like,
Nah.
you don't have to own a
Nah.
house studio to think that way, to think about like, how am I going to make something that, is a
Yeah.
community
No,
where
I
I can
mean,
include
before
other
we had our
people.
own space, we did that when we were in Bethesda, Maryland, and we used to do it in a studio there. And then when we didn't have access to the studio, we worked out a deal with the Bark and Dog bar in Bethesda, Maryland, and they would give us like Tuesday nights to do whatever we wanted. But that came from I had lunch at Barking Dog every week while I
Exactly.
worked there. So to your point, like they just had I like beer battered fries, and that's what they had. So I'd go there every like Thursday when I could to eat. But if I ever had a business meeting, I'd have it there. And so when I went to the owner or the manager and was like, "Hey man, like I'd love to do this like weekly open mic
Right.
type thing," for him, it's exactly what you said. He was like, "You do like you're already here. Just do it on the night the day you come." Like I think it was like Tuesdays. And we did beat battles, we did live performances, we did showcases, we did industry mixers. So like everything that we did when we owned our own space, I just did in other people's spaces. It wasn't new to us. So when we started our recording studio, that
Right.
element of our careers or our lives was already there. It just was like instead of going to someone else's spot, we just do it here. But we also did stuff at your spot, and we also did stuff with Miles Gray, and we also
Right.
did like at Marketo. So like for me, it was just like the DMV community. Like it'd be selfish if we just did it in our studio if we could. I wanted to make sure that people got the experience at Songbird that I received. I wanted people to know this existed. And then when I could invite you out to my spot, I wanted people to know that you guys existed. So it was a great way for me to introduce you to my network and say, hey, these guys own this really cool space. I want you to meet them and go see it. And I know that the reality of it is I would tell 10 people that and maybe one would go actually check it out. But if that one ended up being like a Twink or a Beezy or someone like that I know the relationship then goes further, it's like that's the job. That's what we're doing. It's the relationships. Because Sean, yeah,
Oh, Beezy who? Sean? You okay? So you helped turn him on to Songbird because we're
Beezy's my
we're we're,
guy.
we're
Yeah,
pretty good friends
Beezy's
now. Like he
a
does, he's
great
doing
friend of
stuff.
mine, and yeah, he's one of the few. We've done a lot together with different artists and different events in different places. But
But I mean, he's a good example. Like he comes with that energy of
mm-hmm,
like definitely like identify who you kind of vibe with, and then like
yep,
invest a little
yep,
bit in that relationship. It doesn't mean like no one has time to do that with everybody, so it's on you to kind of decide what sort of spaces and people and
yep,
vibes sort of speak to you a little bit. But if you get that little feeling that you like something, then like just don't be scared to like take that one step further, because the
yeah.
people on the other end
No,
are
do
looking
it.
for that, you
So
know?
we talked about the up and coming artists trying
Um,
to like start out and figure things out. Now for the person who's potentially thinking about opening up their own venue or just their own business, right? Like you obviously did it. You have a partner, so like my wife and I are partners, and that support system was important. But like walk us through like how do you start a venue? How do you start a record store? How do you start a coffee shop? How like that's not a normal thing. I think like but there's someone out there who may be considering it. I'd love for them to hear like what was your journey? What was your steps in the opening up of space in DC?
sure. I mean, first of all, it's hard. Like, you know, I'm not even gonna hold myself out as like the person who did it the smartest or something. And maybe this gets back to like your thing where you're gonna ask me last, like what I would tell myself. Um, there's a certain naivete I may have been blessed with that made me do certain things that
Mm.
maybe I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
do now, which is okay, right? Like embrace the naivete and the leap that ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote business plans. Um, the kernel of it, is of course like the passion of trying to define like what it is you want to do and how you want to be spending your time. Um, and a lot of people have that passion for music. Like that's not a particularly unique thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like music lends itself to being passionate about it and liking it and loving it. Um, so of course everything kind of springs from your passion. That's like just getting you to the starting blocks, I think. And thinking in terms of like, you know, this this business, this industry, like isn't gonna probably is not gonna make you rich. Like your best ambition is to try to make a living at something in a way that you want to spend your time. And one reason I say that is like these are businesses where you're like a working owner. These aren't passive businesses where you kind of sit back and like have a desk and sign off on something and then everyone else does it. Like, you have to be will. I mean, still to this day, like Alicia and I do most everything. I mean, we have employees, but the business doesn't work unless we're also like very active workers and employees of our own business.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that means that like our income is, variable, right? Like, um, uh, and it's hard. I mean, I have a lot of different thoughts on this. Like, I feel that people who are successful at small business, like, in a way, do have a right to make a middle class living. That should be our ambition as a society. Now, like, who's doing it right, who's successful, who isn't, because none of us have like a right to be successful. Success
Mm-hmm.
is earned. But there's this line at which I feel like when I walk in somewhere or I see a business and I'm like, they're doing this well. They're good at what
Yeah.
they do. I hope they're making I hope they can pay their rent. You know what I'm saying? Like, so at a
Spoken like
certain
a
point, if
real
you're
owner.
like, to me, at a certain point, it's like once it shifts from, and this is like a big conversation because there's a lot of people out there that, there's a lot of pressures on small business and there's people that are like really good at it and doing it really well. And I guarantee you they still have trouble paying their bills.
Mm.
And like, that's a problem. That's a problem on like society at large. Um, but first, it's on you. I mean, it always comes
Yeah.
back on you. Like, society can be what it is. That's You can complain about that. That's not going to pay your rent the next month.
Mm-hmm.
So, eyes wide open about the fact that like you have to be able to attain a certain degree of like success and really being good at what you do. And even then still, you still going to have trouble and problems.
Yep. Yep.
Um so okay, I say all that like to say, for me personally, like of course I had to raise money. Um and then it's like,
So what was
okay,
that process like?
who's investing in
Like,
you and why are they investing
mm-hmm.
in you and why are they investing? They love you and believe in you. Um and Sombra was like a first time. I mean, Alicia and I are both professionals for many years, like in real estate and construction and architecture. So like we have this skill set that lends itself to building a business, but Sombra was like a first time actual business for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so like, I was blessed by like a good amount of like savings. I mean, I worked for 15 years as like a real estate professional. Like I had to have my own skin to put in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had saved a lot of money, and then of course like friends and family, and then I was able to get some kind of bank loan for like some equipment and the sound equipment and stuff. But first time business, you don't have much of a track record that like a lot of other people are going to give you money, other than probably
Mm-hmm.
friends and family, hopefully that believe in you and have seen what you do. So you know, like if I didn't have certain savings and other things, like maybe I would have had to spend more time on the track record building part.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets into like maybe how I'm going to answer your question later. Um, and there's a lot of ways to build track record too. Like, you talked about, you pitched using someone else's space, and then like, okay, if you had successful Tuesday nights, like that's in your that goes in your resume. That goes
Yeah.
that's a credit in your column. Like there's a lot of little, it's like building credit. You can start
Yeah.
small, like try to have one good night, or whatever it is, one good piece of content or one good
Mm-hmm.
social media account that's like
Mm-hmm.
resonating with people somehow. Like, you try to learn and fail cheaply if you can.
Mm. Learn
And,
and fail cheaply. I like that.
you know, but there are ways that I didn't do that. Okay. Like, let's just keep it real. So like there's the me giving advice, and then there's like the me as what I actually did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's kind of like it's not one or the other. There's like gray
Yeah.
area. I hosted some events. I was involved in certain scenes and groups that I guess gave me the confidence that at least I knew some of what it would be to like start my business.
Yeah.
But like I wasn't some crazy successful like promoter for years and years before I had my own space. Um, so there was that leap where I was like, I think the marketplace can enjoy this, and I'm gonna go for it, and I'm gonna utilize funds I've saved and some friends and family funds and a little bit of bank funds, and I'm gonna go for it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
I love that.
exactly the
That,
smartest
that
thing? I don't know, but I
mm-hmm.
don't fault myself for it either. So like, as far as advice to other people, there's not one way. Um, and again, the way I did it, like, you know, I can like respect myself and look myself in the mirror for that. I could also tell myself
Mm-hmm.
there's some other things that you should have done first
Yeah.
that would have been smarter. Like sort of catch up to you. Like,
Yep.
right, every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So like the passion and the leap and like I like when you put everything of yourself into something, that's going to reflect in your business. And like I think that reflects in Songbird, that people can see that me and Alicia really care and put a lot into it. And at the same time, whatever we didn't know and whatever our naivete may have been, that's going to reflect in your business too. And like maybe that means you're going to lose money for a little while. Maybe that means people are going to see that you don't quite know what you're doing yet. Like whatever it is, both the good and the bad, it's kind of going to reflect and come back. You're going to reap what you sow in both the good ways and the bad ways. Um,
I love that.
so, like, again, I don't think there's like one right way. I mean, look, the world is a big place, and you can never do too much sort of market research. Like, definitely, you should always try to understand, like, okay, how many record stores are in my city? Where are they located? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you definitely need like business planning and market research to understand what the demand for your product is, or what the demand is for what you want to do, right? And so like you have to marry that. Like you can be a dreamer, and then like but you have to marry that with the real world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're just trying to set yourself up for success, and you know that there's going to be some level of sustainability for what you want to do for people. And I mean, I think the good thing is like music is an amazing product or service or whatever you want to say it is. Like some people don't want to speak about it in those terms. It's an amazing art. but it's also a product and a service. And then so to run a business, you have to think of it in some ways as a product and a service. Like
Hmm.
my product is physical music, my service is hosting live shows, and those things have to pay the rent and make ends meet in the real world. So, but my point is like it's a great. I mean, you know, many people say music is like our highest or our most sacred art form, and I happen to believe that. Like
Hmm.
it's moving, it's living, it's breathing. Like I can go to an art museum and look at paintings on the wall, but that doesn't do that much for me. Um, you know, there's tons of different art, but I'm a believer that like music is the highest form for us. Um, and that's like a philosophical thing that we could talk about. You probably have similar feelings, or most of us watching this probably feel that way because we're watching this and engaged in this to begin with. Um, so I
Yeah,
mean, it's a great, it's a thing that people want, and so you're sort of starting from that place. But yeah, and then it's just like, what are you gonna do that's unique, that's different, that fits your marketplace, that fits your community, and it's just those are big questions to answer, but that's what it's all about.
I love it. I think one of the things you said that I hope anyone listening like taps into is you had 15 years of work experience, right? Both you and your partner. And so when I say the audience and the intended audience for this is someone starting out, I think a lot of people think of like young 18, 16, 19, 20 year old. But like I started my business when I was 28 years old. And so there was a level of living and experience I had before I started that I could apply that I know 18-year-old me would not have been as mature and ready. And I feel like it's the same for you. I remember when I met you guys were pretty much just starting out and you said, yeah, I've got a background in real estate and construction. So like one of the things that was just a no brainer to you was I know how to find a space, I know how to lease it, and I know how to get the building done. And so
Right.
compared to anyone else starting a venue, like those parts were a given. The other parts, which you were going to figure out, was like the programming of the space and the hiring and firing and taxes and all that stuff. Like you said, you can learn as you go, but like you can't sell short that you were over prepared in key parts of that type of business. That I know a lot of people who've opened venues or open restaurants, or open bars, like they don't know what triple net is. Like they don't
Right.
know how to negotiate lease terms. They don't know how to get the bill, the person
Right.
that you're renting from to pay for the construction. Like, but if you know these things, it's like that gives you leg up.
But
And then
like
I love that you.
maybe that person has been a promoter for 5 years, so they know how to like
There you go.
program and drive people. It's like there should be some part of it that you are positioned to like know better than everybody else. Like you can
Yep.
learn some parts. You shouldn't necessarily be like have no experience in any part of it.
Anything. Yeah.
Like you should be bringing some value somewhere, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different places to bring that from. It doesn't have to be one or the
Hmm.
other. As many, and then that's why you have partners, right? Like that's why you partner with other people, because no one person has all these experiences. But yeah, I mean, obviously in this industry, we deal with a lot of young people, artists,
Hmm.
as well as people that work for us, um, and a lot of them like I have a lot of respect for the ones who want to like work for us to learn things. They wanna production manage. They want to, and I mean, and those jobs get competitive too because there's really no shortage of like 20-year-olds that want to break into the business also. So, but the ones that are really want it, they end up standing out. I mean, in the end of the day, in this world, I feel like if you stay at something that you really want, it's gonna some opportunity for it is gonna turn up. Like no one can, like anyone, you may not get this one job or that one thing, but like ultimately, I my experience in the world, not just for myself but other people that I see, is like ultimately when you want something and you stick to that, ultimately you like get somewhere. It may not be exactly where, or it may take a different time frame or a different route, but ultimately in this world I feel like no one can stop you from getting somewhere close or somewhere in the sphere of where you wanted to go.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. That
And I mean, like when I
that
was breaking into real estate, like when I was trying to, when I was in school, like college and law school and stuff, I mean, every semester and every summer, I was doing some type of internship or externship. If I could get hired and get paid, that's awesome. But like, I was doing certain things that were just for credit or for small amounts of money, like because at that time that's what I wanted. And then and like I said, I built like a 15-year career off that. But like, no one was going to stop me from ultimately finding an internship at somewhere that was doing something in the realm of what I wanted to do, even if it wasn't the perfect exact thing, or like if I got three no's, like we're not hiring right now, like somewhere in that industry ultimately was gonna say yes. And so once I sort of was able, to lock into like I want to be in this general sphere. And I mean, look, we can get into a conversation of like privilege and race and all types of things, right? About like why ultimately I may have, I don't need to
hmm
go like so far down this rabbit hole, but you know what I'm saying. And so I don't want to just impose my experience on everybody because there's a lot of roadblocks out there, but there's a lot of opportunities too. And the only thing that can't be taken away from you is, your own desire and your own way that you approach these things. I mean, those are the things that can't be taken away from you, regardless of what someone else
you're
tells you,
absolutely right. I
yes,
mean,
no,
how
or
how
maybe,
started ironically is, so I was an intern. I started as an intern, and then I became a studio manager, and the studio I was at was closed. And I built this concept for this studio that kind of did more than just record, like, true artist development and support and shows and events and brand partnerships and content. And I went to all the studios in the DMV. When I say all, you can't name a studio in 2009 that I didn't visit and sit with the owner or sit with the manager and say, hey, I want to come work for you and this is what I can bring. And not even like pay me, just like I'll figure out how to make money, but let me just be a part of you. And they all turned me down. So like the only reason I started my own business was because I had this idea and I knew I had to do it. And when I went to the people who I felt could benefit from it, when they all said no and there were no other options, my only solution then was like, all right, I'm just going to do it myself. And so I speak to that to like, yes, there are roadblocks. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, there's people who I think if they didn't look like me could have went to those same studios and probably gotten a shot, but nothing was going to stop me from doing it. And that part is what I really try to push, like anyone I work with, to say like, I don't know how serious you are by how many no's you've gone through, right? If you really want to get that opportunity, if you really want to do a show in the DMV, how many venues have you visited? And then I'll ask them like, have you gone to Songbird? And they say, oh no. Well, have you gone here? No. Well, then how bad do you want to do the show? Or if you want to open a venue, it's like, well, do you have a list of like potential places you'd go? It's like, no. Well, then you're just, like you said, you're dreaming. You're just talking about it. And so when you really, really want to do something, you'll find a way to get it done. And my wife and I have a joke where I'm like, people will get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and lug a heavy suitcase and get to the airport by 5:30 and go through TSA pre-check and go through all this and like have a horrible experience to get to the vacation because the vacation is worth it. Nothing's going to stop me from getting to that beach and that sand and that whatever. So if I got to go through hell that morning to like get there, I will do it. And I said, if people just applied that mindset to whatever their dream is, if you're willing to go through some shit early on, it'll happen for you. But if you look at the shit and you're like, I don't want to do that, to me, it's the equivalent of the person who's got the vacation book that are like, I don't want to have to pack a bag and have to carry my suitcase down the stairs and then I have to like stand in a line at the airport and I got to like be crammed. It's like if you,
Yeah. I mean, the difference being, yeah, like I'm with you. The difference being, you might, you might do all that, and then you get to the gate, and the plane's like taking you to
You got to be
Cincinnati,
happy
and
to make
like
the
that's
most
cool. You
out
got
of
to
it.
be
And
happy
that,
with
yeah, you're
Cincinnati, you
absolutely
know,
right. What you have
or
in your
like
mind may not be what
whatever.
happens, but it's that
Exactly.
day when we're riding in the rain. It's like, yo, like this is life. Like we're doing it. We're here. Like we started our company with the simple goal of can we pay rent in 30 days? Like we didn't have the funding. We did friends and family and didn't raise the money we needed. And like we literally were like scraping by. And so we had a 30-day goal. Like we have 30 days to make this much money to at least get to the next month. And we find ourselves doing that month after month. And then we built with that mindset. But that naivety, that like looking back, I look at how we started and I'm like, we were crazy. Like what were we thinking? But we didn't know what we didn't know. So we made it work. And those were some of the funnest years in business for me. And we learned from that. And it's so funny, even as we start this new venture, I'm pulling from some of the things we did very early on with our original business because it's like, if you don't have that energy, if you don't have that level of like, close my eyes and just do it, you can't be too polished. You can't just throw money at the problem and it solves it. And I think even if someone had given you $100 million and said go start Songbird, you would have missed some of the things you had to learn to be where you are now. When I heard you guys were moving to Union Market, and when I went and saw the new store, in Union Market, I was really impressed. I was like, yo, like he's come a long way from the Adams Morgan spot. Like this is like much closer to the vision he was talking about, and like, but you had to live that first chapter to get to chapter two. And I'm sure you appreciate chapter one just as much, if not more than chapter two, because like what you guys had in Adams Morgan was phenomenal. Like I walked in and I just remember thinking like, holy shit, like this is a record store. Like it's not too big, not too small. It, you had the old school record player with the I don't know what was it called, the like that looked like a telephone box, and like the thing that pressed the records. And I just remember
Oh,
like
the
walking and
voiceograph.
felt
Yeah, we still have.
that was just so cool to me.
Yeah,
Like
we still
so,
have that at Union.
when someone else is looking at you while you might have been having a tough month or like stressed out, I walk in your store that day and I'm like, man, he's doing it right. I hope, like what you said, I hope he's making enough to pay his rent because like I'm a fan of what he's doing.
Cool, man. Yeah. I mean, thank you, and vice versa. And like you said, some of that is the stuff that money can't do, which is like, what is your personal vision, your personal expression, as shaped by, of course, all the other experiences and everything else that you've seen in the world, and what's your unique spin or your unique take on it, and again, that's not to say like it's so novel. I mean, there's other record stores, there's other record bars, there's other record cafes. Like you're more
Mm-hmm.
than free to borrow from other things that you see. But at a certain point, there's always like a personal expression, right? I mean, it's the same as like what we choose to wear or how we speak or whatever. Like, there's always some element of like, what's your personal
I love
fingerprint
it.
on this.
All right, so now you've built a venue,
Um,
you've built the record store cafe, you've moved now, you've made it on the other side of the pandemic, which I applaud you for because I know that must not have been easy. What's the future of that business and your model? Someone's in that space. Like, what are we getting back to open mics, and are people wanting to be back in physical spaces, or are you still seeing challenges with that? Like, what's the future of a physical brick and mortar creative built business?
yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe we're on the cusp of hopefully getting back to somewhat normal operations at Songbird. Like the calendar is pretty full. People seem to be coming out. It was kind of a tough winter. There was a lot of cancellations and people not coming out and stuff. Um, so yeah, I mean the calendar is looking pretty good. Like I said, Songbird at this point in time, the vision is, like I talked about, we're pretty entrenched in the live music game at this point, which again was like come a long way from the original vision. So a lot of touring bands, but a lot of locals, and then it's always important to us to do some more. creative programming. Like we have a couple different monthly open mic type situations that we work on, and again, it's important to us to like always create space in our calendar for things like that. And other like community focused things. I mean, we had this dope like vintage clothing pop up a couple weekends ago during the day, and we are like the
Hmm.
only venue that I know of that does like a weekend brunch program where you can like sit in that brunch, and we have like DJs and stuff. So just to like have a good time during the day, and that's sort of just a community type thing. Like part of the vision was always that it's not just
Hmm.
like you're here for the show from like 8 to 10. That it's a space that's open at other times. So we're continuing with that vision. And yeah, I mean, we really like the space. It's got high ceilings, got like roll up doors. We can't wait till the weather gets nicer and like a safe, sort of airy environment. But the space lends itself to like a lot of cool shows and other types of events. And then,
Hmm.
Birdland Records, which is just now like a block down the street. So if you could picture Union
Hmm.
Market, like Birdland's on Fifth Street near the actual
Okay.
food market, and Songbird's like at the top of
Yep.
Fifth Street, where the old Coconut Club was, and near the Angelica movie theater. The record store has done pretty well from like day one. And again, we ran
Hmm.
Songbird for 6 years, so like it wasn't like we were a brand new entity, but the record store is different just because like retail and people wore masks. Like obviously we were like taking precautions, but people have been coming to the record store. I think they're a little more safe now, but people have been coming to the record store since we opened in October 2020, and it's grown, but it was like pretty accepted from day one, and so we just are gonna keep doing that. And like, but we do these listening parties, and we do in-store performances, and we do interesting things like we had a pre-release thing for Earth Gang the other night. Like speaking of Atlanta, they DJ came in and played the album for like 30 or 40 people. We've done that with like Two Tone and Shaolin Jazz. We've done that with Tim Hicks and his project. We've had local hip hop artists come in and do like a performance in the store. We had this dude Alexander Nate from Virginia who's amazing, and he did a live in store. He did like 5 or 6 songs. It was sort of like a house studio vibe. Like it was like a invite group of people, and did like 5 or 6 songs, and then it was just like a hang. Um, we have a live in store um, on March 1st. It's like this local band, Teething Veils, but they teamed up with a guy from Ohio who's doing like a small tour. So it's like couple live bands, but like
Hmm.
so it's more than just the record store. But like we're doing some apparel, we're doing turntables. So like we're doing some of the lifestyle and like hardware
Hmm.
components. Most record stores you go in is just the records, but we're trying to be slightly more than that for people. So it's like if you're just getting into it, and we can help you with your turntable or help kind of guide you on your way. So it's just sort of that same ethos that we brought to Somber from the beginning, and just trying to make that extra effort to like meet people where they are, and um, engage with people, and give a little extra, give a little more, try to be friendly and welcoming and accessible. Um, those are like the little extra, like that's where I feel like we can make our impact, right? Like that to me is what the vision or the brand is about, is that we want to be friendlier and more accessible
I love
and
it.
than you're used
I
to
had a
for
placement
things like
on that
this.
song on that Earth Gang album, and we couldn't clear the sample. Speaking of records, so I sampled a Aretha Franklin record. So I produced a
What does that
record for
mean? What
Earth
does that
Gang that
mean?
was gonna be on that album, called Aretha. I sampled a Aretha, "Don't Trouble the Water," "Bridge Under Water Under the Bridge" or something like that, and we couldn't get it cleared on the Ghetto Gods album. Yeah, we couldn't get it
On
cleared,
the
so we
Ghetto
dropped it as
Gods
just like a
album?
throwaway track. But Earth Gang are family, like you said, Atlanta family. And I'm really excited for the album because from what I've heard, it's good. I I do, yeah.
I was
We
gonna
had a
say, like, do you know
session
those guys at
last
all
year
from
and we
Atlanta?
worked on some music. So good guys. And I know when they come to DC because they just announced their tour, I text them. I was like, yo, when you're in DC, let me know if you need anything because again, those are the kinds of relationships that I love connecting like people with people.
Did they announce
I
their
don't
tour? Did
know
they
the
announce
venue, but I
where are they
want to
playing
say
in
based on
DC?
their
Do you
fan
know?
base, I would guess they're either going to do Howard or Fillmore. Yeah, they got to be at
Like
over
Fillmore? They
1,500
might have done
tickets now.
Fillmore.
So my guess is Howard or Fillmore.
Cool. I mean, yeah, like, they
I
played song.
remember.
Them and
I
JID
remember.
did Songbird back in the day, like
Yep.
2017.
And that's
That's
like I don't think
that was
people understand the
crazy.
importance of a small venue. That's why
Um,
when I say small, and I had to preface it with like that doesn't mean small like it's less important for an artist like Earth Gang and JID in 2017. That's your introduction to the DC market, right? And so if you're an artist, if you're a small label, yes, the big venue and the whatever's the biggest, most notable venue in your city is the dream and the goal. But don't ever overlook that first venue because there's nothing like selling out a Songbird. There's no energy like a 200 person, 150 person venue sold out and you're performing and everyone knows your lyrics. And you can ask any artist this. It's really cool when you do the arenas. It's really cool when you do the stadiums and even some of the bigger concert venues. But as an artist, there's only one first. And that first for you is when that first time you sell out that small venue and everyone knows your lyrics is nothing like it. So I've experienced that at Songbird. I hope to experience it again with other artists we work with. But yeah, man, and it's really really exciting to see what you've done. I hope watching this that both artists and their teams are more in tune with what it takes to connect with people like you. And I also hope that that person who's like, man, I really love music, and I may not have a background in music. I'm drawn to it and I understand the importance of it, but I have a background in real estate, or I have a background in construction, or I have a background in hospitality, or any of these services. And maybe I in my city can open up my version of this, because it's needed. And I think it's just I want to give you and Alicia your flowers now and say like thank you for what you guys have built. I'm excited to hopefully have our 24/7 artists creative offices near you guys in Union Market. Hopefully by the end of this year, we'll open some. We'll have to be in the DMV at some level. So, uh, oh, it's
all
on the
right. Well, we got
table.
to talk
Like
about that. If
I'm
that's
putting
on
it
the
out
table, then
there.
yeah, like definitely we should talk more.
Like
Earth Gang is going to
welcome to the
Fillmore on
21st
May
century.
20th. I just
Fillmore,
looked it
yes, that
up.
makes sense. So they went from Songbird in 2017 to the Fillmore in 22, and obviously with the pandemic, they probably could have done it. I'm about to
And
say they
I
probably
think
did
they did another. They
something
did another film.
19 maybe.
They did another
Yeah,
Fillmore show. I think like yeah, like 2019 because
bump them
we
up.
co-promoted it.
Yep.
Sometimes like we'll stay on and
You guys did that
co-promote
with
it at
I
the
remember
next
Xavier
venue.
Omar. Like you guys did that
Just because
with
like
him. Like I
we
remember
have
like
the
a couple
email
shows. Like
list.
because I would buy the tickets. I'd buy tickets and then you get the email. Hey, the show is now at the Fillmore. Daniel Caesar. Yep.
Yeah, Daniel Caesar, but like those are instances where it just blew out and they went straight. Like Earth Gang and JD actually played a show at Sombra and then went to the next. Like the Xavier Omar, and there's sometimes those examples where the show will kind of
Yeah.
blow out and then
I
never
always hate when
happens
that
at Sombra and it
happens because
gets
I'd
moved up
rather see a
to
Daniel
another
Caesar
venue.
at
But yeah,
Songbird for the
but I
first time.
mean, no, we're proud of that. There's a ton of artists that come through touring and also local that
That's dope.
like you said,
All right. Well, Khaled. Yep.
right.
Damn.
Well,
Yeah.
like
You guys.
Khaled
At this
played
point,
Songbird.
whenever we edit this, I'm gonna make sure I have like a list of the artists that introduction to DC came through Songbird because I think it'll help a frame of like the venue is so important, and I'm saying that word, but it'll show in the graphic like you guys introduced DC to artists on the rise, and shout out to your talent buyers and you guys for having the ear to know like this is who I need to be rocking with and listening to. All right, so we are now entering that
Yeah, sorry, man, you broke up on me a little bit, but yeah, and also like not just. I mean, we pride ourselves on being like diverse and eclectic because I mean, yeah, definitely a lot of some of the
Mm-hmm.
hip hop and alt soul acts, but like Coulter
Yep.
Wall and Tyler Childers did their first DC shows at Songbird, which is like country and neo country. Like we just had Breland, up and
Mm.
coming, and Brittany Spencer, like up and coming African American country
I love
artists,
it.
which is an important genre. And like Moonchild did their first shows. I mean, so
Yep.
it's important
No,
for us to be
the
like
beauty, and that's the beauty of,
eclectic and
of that type of
accessible
venue is
too.
we could do a Boom Scat and a Manny Wells show, but we also did Luke, James Schaefer, and Sidney Franklin shows with you guys. So we covered Sidney Franklin. Yep, yep. So we've done a
Sydney,
multitude
that's who I
of
was trying to think
genres,
of. That's who
backgrounds,
I was trying to think of
diverse.
earlier.
Because
Yeah.
the venue's just dope. It's not, it's just dope music. It's where you go to find really talented artists.
What do you think? What's a
That's a good
comparable
question. I'm
space in
gonna have to.
Atlanta, do
I'll
you
put
think, right
something
now?
in. I haven't
I
even
see
heard of
this
that.
place called
But
Vinyl that some
I'll
people.
admit, I haven't gone out in 2 years. I've been terrified to leave, so I don't even know what's open or not open. Uh, but there's a. I'll get you.
I'm just
I'll put
curious,
it
like what
here,
the
so when I
cool
put
two,
it in
three
the
hundred
edit,
person
and I
room in
won't
Atlanta
answer. I'll
is,
just
you
put
know?
the name of it. But my guy Chris Patterson will let me know because I'm sure. I think the difference with Atlanta though,
Okay.
and this
Yeah,
is DC's unique is
I'm sure there's.
Atlanta has these pockets. So where like DC we have Songbird, like Maquette and all those guys exist, but like I think like we have Songbird, and then we have 930 Club, then we have Howard Theater, then we have Fillmore. It's kind of like a rise. Atlanta has like six of those in every direction. It's like it just has these pockets of different communities, and each community has its own Songbird and its own
Right.
this. So I think Atlanta is more like an LA where it's like, Hollywood is very different than,
Yeah, that makes
downtown, and
sense.
downtown's very, yeah, yeah. So, but I will find out and get
It's
you that
bigger.
comp
It's
because I
bigger.
know it does exist. And I'm my guy Chris Patterson to be like, you do. Why didn't you just say da da da? Tabernacle down here, but Tabernacle I think is probably more like Union Stage. They're probably like 600 comp.
There's a place called Vinyl,
I'll
like that I
check it out.
see some
I'm
people
sure
playing
Davina
at that I
knows. I
think is
wish she
like
was up here.
closer to
Davina
our
is
size.
the buyer of tickets.
But I'm sure there's others. I'm sure there's. It's all good. I just like to see like I like to
Where
just
they're
pay attention
playing.
to like
Yeah.
what other venues that
All
like
right.
when someone
Well,
comes through
now we're
DC,
reaching
like
that part of
where
the
else
show
they're
where I'm
playing.
going to ask. Well, I'm gonna ask a couple questions that were sent in,
Cool, man.
or
What
at
else can
least
I tell
one,
you?
and I'll get to like the big 24/7 question. So I think I kind of asked this already, but the question that is asked here is
Okay.
um what, we already answered that one. I want to ask one that hasn't been answered. We covered a lot. All right. How important is, well, I guess I'll reword it for how I think what they're trying to ask is like, you have a partner in business. Like, how did you choose your partner?
Um. Well, like you do. My partner in
And
business is
everything.
also, pretty much my partner in life also. So, um, it's a unique. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody has that. Like, I don't expect. It's got its pros and cons, but like if that's someone you trust more than anything, and that is like integrated in your life,
Mm-hmm.
that's one less thing you have to worry about. Like, because business partners is its own drama. Um, so obviously somebody that you really vibe with and that you trust and can spend your time with, like,
Yep.
I've seen more than one business that have internal partnership problems. Uh, so that's like its own topic that like I could speak on it, but for me and you
Yeah.
know, it's a little
Yeah.
different because it's like more like the mom
In
and pop
fact, you have to
situation
learn
where
how
there's
to
not as much
create
separation
separation. It took
between
me
life
five
and
years to
business.
really start figuring that if I didn't, it wouldn't end well because I'm focus, focus, focus. And like, so I didn't know how to turn it off. And Davina had to like teach me over time, like, you got to turn that off, and I have to be your wife here. And then I can be your business partner here, but I can't be your business partner 24/7. Cause like, pun intended, but, like it doesn't work that way. And I think it took me about 5 years. And then once I got it, and I'm still working on it, you're definitely never perfect at it. But like, I understand now how to like, do not disturb, don't check the email. If we go on vacation, like be present and be like husband and dad, and not, hey, did you check your email, and like follow up with that brand that like, you can't do that all the time. So yeah, still learning, but that was one of the challenges. But on the flip side, trust. I think
Right.
that's, you're absolutely right. It's almost like, because you had your background in real estate, you knew about construction, it allowed for certain things to be easier. I also think, having seen other friends and other peers in business doing business with the person you trust the most in the world, it's like exactly what you said. It's one less thing that I got to worry about. I don't have to worry about you screwing me. I don't have to worry about like, because like, if you screw me, it's all bad, and it will never be bad for us like that. Um, so it's just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah, man, it's a big thing. Like I said, I've seen many a business have those
Yeah,
problems, and I mean you're gonna have those problems, but
one less thing.
I
All right.
guess for
And then I will
us,
ask now the
it's one less
24/7
thing.
artist question of the day, which is, what is something you wish you knew when you were first starting out? If you could go back and tell your version of yourself, just starting out in business, not really knowing what's coming, what's a piece of advice you would give that version of Joe?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you could come at that from several different ways. I think one of the things that we touched on was like I think um I could have or should have like maybe done some more of the smaller, like prepared myself, done tried to promote more events at someone else's space, like maybe tried to build a little bit more before actually opening the physical space. So like again, don't think that like just having a physical space is the end all be all. Like there's a lot you can build before you get to that point. Um and maybe telling myself to focus on that for a little more time before, like it's like, okay, great, I have this whole plan. Well, like why at the same time concurrently? I could have been trying to do some more like events or community building type things, adjacent or concurrent with like um, planning for the physical space.
I get it.
So
Nah,
I think that for sure, like
that
even for
makes a
just
lot
the
of sense.
learning or um, yeah, I think that's a good one because also that's
Yeah.
like a piece of advice that anybody can apply.
No, that's great. Great
You
advice.
know,
No, that is great. That
I'm
is
gonna, I'm gonna,
absolutely
I'm gonna
great
use that
advice,
one.
and and
I'm
and I
gonna,
think it
I think
applies to
that's
every, if you're starting a record label, if you're starting a publishing house, if you're starting a musical career. I think that exposure, you learn through your failures, and you learn through your mess ups. I tell people that all the time. I learned how to be a better businessman by making a lot of mistakes, and you get opportunities to make those mistakes on someone else's, you know, venue or someone else's thing. Um, the person you're working with will help guide you through it if they have any experience. So you might not have to make those mistakes, but also like you'll be better off for it when you launch your own thing. So, I've done events and had two people show up to a 150-person venue. I know what that looks like. I know, like, all right, I got the show, I got the date, I got the flyer, I got this, I got that. And I didn't mark it. And I just thought everyone would show up because I'm me, and no one shows up. It's like, oh, that's never happening again. If you don't go through that in someone else's space, by the time we do our events at house, like I would have never even thought like, okay, I literally am going to text 100 people and say, hey, please come to house on this day. Hey man, following up, just making sure you got the invite. Like that extra step of texting the 100 people that I need to show up,
Right.
I didn't do early on, but I learned the importance of that. So even if someone RSVPs through the Eventbrite, or even if someone RSVPs through the Facebook, if I know I need at least 50 people there to not feel like this event was a loss, I'm going to text 100 and hopefully 50% of them show up. Or, hey man, don't forget, if you want to bring someone, bring someone. Like, so that it's like, I learned that from doing events
Right.
at other venues and realizing like you could have what you think is the best show in the world, but if I don't take that extra step, I could have crickets in that joint, and nobody wants to do an event. You know, it doesn't matter the venue size. If you only got 5% occupancy, it does not look good. So I appreciate that answer, because it's one that I hope more people live up to. Just like you don't have to wait
Right.
till everything's perfect to go. Take an element or elements of what you want to do and try applying it beforehand. Like you said, could you have promoted some shows at another venue?